Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be doing the front and rear brakes on this 2009 Nissan Titan. Now this should fall in line with any first-gen Titan, which is 2004 to 2015, so let's get into it now. All right, guys, we're here on the passenger side. Got the front end in the air. The whole front end is jacked up. So of course, the first thing we're going to need to do here is remove the wheel. The wheel is held in with 6 21mm lug nuts. So I got a 21mm here on my impact. And we're just going to fire all 6 of these right out. All right, guys, as you can see, we got the wheel off. So let's go ahead and get into this and get everything disassembled to get these brakes and rotors replaced. So the first thing I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, but I would suggest it because it's going to make it a lot easier on yourself, is if the whole front end is in the air, so you know both front tires as we have it are off the ground, not just one side, both tires, what you could do is make sure the steering wheel is unlocked. Take your hands and turn the wheel all the way. All right, let it lock in, and that's going to give us better access to put, you know, a breaker bar if we need to, an impact, any tool you want to use. You're going to have a lot more access if you turn the wheel. So turn the wheel towards you to get a lot of room on this side, so we have access to get to everything we need to in order to get this disassembled. All right, guys, now that we have good access here, I'm going to go ahead and remove our 2 caliper mounting bolts. Now they are a 17mm, so I have a 17mm here on an impact. You could utilize a ratchet, a breaker bar, whatever tool of your choice. I'm going to be using an impact, so fire that out. Go ahead and get the bottom 17mm. Okay, got both of those broken free, and now that those are freed up, the caliper should be free to move. Okay, now I want this caliper to be completely out of my work way. So what I'm going to do, you don't necessarily have to do, although I would suggest that it's, you know, one nut and it's going to make it a lot easier. This caliper hose mounting bracket right here is a 12mm. Fire that off, take that 12mm off, pull the brake hose off. So actually I'm going to pull this caliper first, then I'm going to pull the brake hose right here, right off of its mount. There we go. Fought me a little bit to come off, but now that we have this completely free, we can take this and put it up here on the upper control arm, and it's a nice tight sound spot where it's not going to fall or move while we're working, and it'll be completely out of our way while we finish disassembling everything. All right, guys, so next step here is to pull our pads out. If we look at the pads, there is some uneven wear, so these were definitely in need of replacing. So definitely not good. Definitely going to look over everything. We need to make sure our slide pins and everything is in order, but we'll touch on that when the time comes. So pads are out. Now we can go ahead and remove our caliper bracket so we can remove the rotor. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and remove our caliper bracket right here. So it's held in with 2 18mm bolts. Okay, so same deal. I have a 18mm on an impact. Now these might be in here really tight. I did the other side already, and they just didn't come out with the impact. I had to do a little bit extra to get them to break free. Let's see how this works, and then I'll give you some insight if you have some frozen ones or ones that don't want to budge easily. Okay, so I have my 18 on an impact. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be coming off. It's probably going to be the same deal with the upper one. Nope. Okay, so both of these are, you know, obviously in there because the impact isn't backing them off with just a hit of the trigger. So I'll show you what we're going to do to get these things out easily and effectively. All right, guys, so as you saw, I just tried to impact on both of these 18mm and they were not budging. I'm in the Northeast, so these brakes have been done in about 3 years, so they're got their fair share of rust holding them in. Now you might be able to get away with just throwing a bigger breaker bar on this. The impact might work for you. I have an extendable half drive ratchet. I tried that on the other side, didn't work. So going off the experience I had with the other side, I want to approach this exactly the same and show you how we're going to get this off easily without busting knuckles. Okay, so what I have here is a MAP torch, so small propane or MAP torch. We're going to persuade it with a little bit of heat. Now I'm not telling you to use an acetylene torch and glow this thing up red. Use your head, be smart about it. And what we're going to do is just put this on the head of the bolt here, and right there where it goes in to the knuckle, we're going to heat this up for about 1.5 minutes. And then once this gets rather warm, we're going to ensure this thing comes right out, and we're going to back it out. All right, so I want to sit on this for a minute here, and then we're going to get this bolt out. All right, guys, I'm approaching about a minute and a half here. So heat really persuades bolts. It'll help you, save you on a broken bolt or anything crazy like that, or if you're having a trouble bolt that's fighting you. Typically, after you heat a bolt up like this for a minute, minute and a half, you can put an impact on it and it'll fly out. I wasn't that lucky on the other side. I actually had to put a breaker bar on it after I heated it up. So let's see if the impact will do it now. Like I said, a lot of times this will work, but let's see. Nope, she's not coming, so I'm gonna have to do the same thing that I did on the other side, and that is put a breaker bar on this after I heated it up. So here is just a regular, you know, like 18-inch breaker bar. So I'm gonna lock this in, and what I also have here is 2 extensions from a jack handle. So this is an old jack handle here to give me extra leverage. So now, if I start pushing on that thing, as you can see, she just moved. Yep, there we go. All right, so I got that to budge. Just needed a little bit of heat, guys, and some manual force. But now, I didn't have to exert a lot of strength, and now I can put an impact on this, and it should fire right out. So there we go, guys. A little bit of heat. Broke it loose with a breaker bar, impact, got it right out. You might not have that much trouble with these bolts. Like I said, this is in the Northeast. It's got a lot of rust. It's subjected to a lot of weather. This truck is driven all the time, so that is an issue with, you know, why this probably was such a pain to get out. But, you know, like I said, there's different approaches. That is an easy, surefire way to get it out without breaking it and breaking your knuckles. So just some insight. Let's go ahead and get this other one out. All right, so we're just doing the same thing for this upper bolt as we did for the bottom. I'm going to heat it up, separate it, get it loose with a breaker bar, and then fire it out with an impact. Just be careful here if you're using a little propane torch like I am of the ABS wire. Obviously use your head, stay away from it. You can easily get away with this with no issues. Just pay attention and be smart. It's very simple. All right, so same deal. We're going to heat this up for about a minute and a half, and then I'm going to get this thing right out. All right, guys, just got that thing loose with a breaker bar. So now we're going to go ahead and fire this out. Just remember to be careful, because once this bolts out, this bracket is free and it'll just fall right off. So hold it while you take out the last bolt. There she is. And there we go, guys. Bracket removed. Got those bolts out with not too much of a fight. All right, guys, so now it's just a matter of getting the rotor off. The rotor technically should be free like this and slide right off. In our case, it's probably freed up just from all the impacting, trying to get those 2 18-mil bolts out. But if yours is rust welded to the hub, which could very well be a possibility, just take a 3 or 4 pound rubber mallet, hit around the body of the rotor, give it a few nice whacks. It'll probably separate the rust, and then you can just slide the rotor right off. All right, so there we go, guys, fully disassembled. Let's get this thing together with some new parts. All right, guys, time for the new pads and rotors. So I have the front and rear here. It was purchased by the customer in a kit from Detroit Axle. So it has the 2 front rotors in one box, and it has the cording pads in another, and then it has the 2 rear rotors in another box with the rear pads. Okay, I already did one of the fronts, as I mentioned. The part number right here on this box for the front rotors is R31506, and then we have the front pads, which is P-1286. Okay, so there we go, guys. Here is our new pads and rotors from Detroit Axle. Let's get these things installed. All right, guys, one thing I want to note before we install the rotor, and this is the case with many rotors, like if you got some from Advanced or AutoZone, or as it is the case with these Detroit Axle rotors, if you see they have some oil on them. All right, so they have an oil almost going around the entire front and back of the rotor, and that's just to give it longer shelf life and protect it from rusting and all that good stuff. You can see all of it right here. See that? That's all oil. Okay, so what you want to do is take some brake cleaner. We're going to spray this thing down front and back, wipe it down with a paper towel, and then the rotor will be ready for install. So this kit actually came with its own Detroit Axle brake cleaner, but obviously any parts brake cleaner will work. So I'm going to spray this thing down, wipe it off, and it'll be ready for install. All right, so have the rotor all brake cleaned up. No more oil, wiped down, ready to go. So we're just going to slide it back over the wheel studs. Now you notice it is loose. One thing I like to do to prevent it from flexing on us while we're reinstalling everything and getting this put back together is push it all the way back, get it nice and aligned accordingly, and then what we're going to do is thread on a lug nut, fire this in so the lug nut holds it in place while we reassemble everything. All right, so just got my impact. All right, and there we go, guys. Just got that held in place, so now we can get back into the reassembly and get this put back together. All right, so you can see we have our brake caliper bracket here. Now we do need to do a little bit of servicing on this prior to installing it. Okay, so the first thing here is you need to check your caliper slide pins. On the other side, I have a completely frozen one that I got to get unfrozen, which I won't have to torch it and do a whole bunch of stuff. But if you see this one right here, this one's pretty good. So let me move this here. All right, so if you see, this has a decent amount of play. Okay, so that's pretty good. I want to service it, but that's, you know, about roughly what it should be. Okay, this other side here is moving, but it's pretty stiff. Okay, so what we're going to do is pull these out, these slide pins. We're going to put some grease on them, clean them up, and get them back installed so we have a fresh caliper bracket with slide pins lubed up, ready to go for some fresh braking. All right, so let's get these things out and service them, and then this caliper bracket will be ready for install. All right, so you can really just pull this out. Be careful, the boot might be a little bit dry rotted like mine is. It's kind of hard to hold the camera and do this at the same time, but as you can see, I'm just pulling on it, and I'll be able to pull this out and it'll squirt itself right out. So let me do that real quick. And there we go, pulled it right out. So definitely has a little bit of, you know, corrosion and stuff on there. We got to get cleaned up. So what you want to do is wipe it down real good, and then after you clean it up nice, we're going to take some new caliper slide pin grease and, you know, put it all over the pin and get this thing back installed. All right, guys, you can see we have this caliper pin out, cleaned up, ready to go. If you can see, I have the caliper bracket right here. What we're going to do is take the boot, because the boot is off. You want to put this in first because it kind of has to squeeze in and form itself to the bracket. So if you can see, we got that in, and now what we're going to do is grease up our pin and slide this thing back in, and it will be serviced, ready for installation. So what I have here is some ultra disc brake caliper lube. This is just some grease that you put to get this thing back lubricated correctly. You can find this at AutoZone, Advanced, really any you know, automotive parts store should have this. So I'm just going to take some here. You don't need a whole lot. I'm just going to go around the body here lightly. All right, so just spread it out evenly as possible, get a little bit on that edge, and then we're just going to press this bad boy right back in. So see, I got it, and then I'm going to press it into the bracket, and then you might be able to press it and get that boot to slip back over the top. I'm just going to make sure by doing it with my hand. So there we go, that boot is back over. So just make sure you get it right back over the top of the pin there. Let me get this back in some more. There we go. There it is, guys. Got that. So it's ready to go. So we got our caliper pin all greased up, ready to go. We just got to do the other side now, and then this bracket will be ready for install. All right, guys, just wanted to bring you back in real quick for this other pin. You can see this one was way more compromised. It has a little bit of rust, and you know, the grease is all but dried up. So make sure you get this nice and clean before you put it back in, so it doesn't lock up and rust on you in the future. So not as clean as the other one, but we're going to get this thing cleaned up, greased up, and just as good as the first one. All right, guys, so caliper bracket is ready for install. So we're going to go ahead and slide this thing back over our rotor carefully. All right, so once you get it slid in, just grab one of your 18 mil bolts. I'm going to start with the top. All right, so I'm just going to find my way in here. Just be careful of the ABS wire there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing threaded in and started just to grab it. All right, so it's grabbing. You can see, got that bolt in there. Hold it in place. I'm going to go ahead and get this bottom one finger tight and started as well. And then we're going to torque both of these bracket bolts to spec. All right, guys, as you can see, we have both of our 18 mils here finger tight. So what we're going to do is torque these to spec. Now the torque spec for these two 18 mil bracket bolts is 155 foot-pounds. Okay, so it's pretty tight. Got my torque wrench here locked in, 155. Here we got to click on that bottom one. So just tread carefully around the wire for the ABS on that upper bolt, but lock this one in as well. 155, there we go guys. So both 18 mils now, torque to spec. All right, so we have our two 18 mil caliper bracket bolts locked in, torque to spec. Time to get the new pads in. As you notice, one of these has a wear sensor that goes on the rear. So the one with the wear goes on the rear. This will be the front. Okay, so one thing I would suggest to do is use a little bit of brake component lubricant. So most brake pads these days come with this. What you want to do is put a little bit on the contact points where it meets the hardware. And also, including this kit, many brakes come with new hardware, new shims. Personally, from experience from doing a lot of brakes, I tend to find that the OEM hardware fits better and causes less issues versus putting in some new aftermarket clamps. Most aftermarket hardware doesn't fit 100%, and sometimes will leave you with some squealing and stuff, or you know, it'll change the dynamic of the pad when it's pressed in, those sort of things. So in my opinion, if your OEM hardware is good, unless it's damaged, broken, bent, something of that nature, I would just keep it. Okay, so we have this greased up. You can go ahead and slide your pad in. So we're going to do the back one first here. So I think it's going to be easier for me to sneak it in the top first and then pop it in the bottom. There we go. All right, so we got the back pad in. So I'm going to do the same thing with the front, put some grease on it, press it in, and we're good to go. All right, so just dropping her on in, guys. Nothing fancy. There we go. Pads are installed. All right, so pads are installed. If you notice, I have a microfiber cloth right here, and that's simply to cover the new rotor and brakes, because we're going to be retracting the piston now, or pistons, on this caliper. So the new pads will fit, because obviously we can't utilize the brakes with the pistons in this orientation. Okay, so let's get this retracted and then we can get this caliper back on. All right guys, so if you see here, what I have is a caliper brake pad tool. So it's almost like a ratchet. Okay, so this is very convenient for dual or, you know, 4 piston caliper setups. You could get away with doing 2 C-clamps. So if you don't have this tool or don't feel like investing in it, you can put the old pad right here in the caliper, put a C-clamp here, a C-clamp here, and then, you know, back and forth evenly push them back. You could do that if you don't have this tool. We're going to be utilizing this tool because really this is the correct tool and what you need in order to do this. So what I'm going to do, see where we're at here, and get this bad boy set up. And then once it's about making contact, you can hear it, and it's going to start pressing these things out. All right guys, so it's about gripped, so it's going to be moving a bit here. I'll try to get you the angle, but you can see it's just pressing that pad looking part of the tool through the threads and retracting those pistons right back. All right, so let's get these things retracted and then we can get them over the new pads. All right, so pistons are retracted. They're not fully back in, but I did test it. That's more than enough clearance that we need to clear these new pads. So there we go. One thing I'm going to do in addition before we put this on is take a little bit of our caliper grease again. We're going to go around the body of the piston where it makes contact with the back of the pad. And that way we just got a nice little film right there between the contact spot of the pad and the caliper. And you're also going to want to do it here on these 3 front spots where it contacts the front pad. All right, so there we go guys, this is all ready for install. All right guys, caliper here, we're just going to slide it right back over here, and there we go guys, caliper is on. So we just got to start our bolts and then we can get this torque to spec. All right guys, so our caliper is slid over. You can see I have the hardware, just you align it with the caliper, and then you can start your 17 mil caliper bolt and get that thing going in till it grabs. And got that top one going, so I just got to get this bottom one. We're going to get both 17 mils finger tight, and then we're going to torque them to spec. All right guys, so we have both of the 17 mils here finger tight, so we're going to go ahead and torque these to spec and get them locked in. So the torque spec for these 2 caliper bolts is 53 foot-pounds. Okay, so I got my torque wrench here locked in to 53. Not too crazy tight. There we go. Got one. Let's go ahead and get this bottom one here. And there we go. Both of those are now locked in to 53 foot-pounds. And if you notice, the only thing we still have here is our brake hose. You could slide this back over before you torque the caliper in. It might be a little bit easier, but as you can see, we got play, so not a big deal. Slid right back over. So we're going to grab our 12 mil here. I'm just going to get this thing started by hand, and I'm just going to lock that in with the impact, and then that'll be good to go. All right, so 12 mil on my impact. Just snug, guys, nothing crazy. All right, so there we go, guys. This is fully assembled. New brake pads and new rotor installed. Front is good to go. Let's get into the rear. All right, so we're on to the rear here. So same thing as the front. We're going to go ahead and get this wheel off. So it is a 21 mil. So it's got 21 mil on my impact. We're going to fire all 6 of these right out. All right, guys, on to the rear. Now this setup is a lot different than the front, so let's go ahead and get into it. So this really doesn't have a bracket. It's just held in with slide pins onto the axle. There are 2 10 mil caliper bolts. So I have a 10 mil here on a socket wrench. We should be able to easily break this free. All right, so there is the top one. I'm gonna go ahead and get on the bottom one as well. You could probably access the bottom one with the impact, but they shouldn't be that tight, and they should easily break free with the socket wrench. And I got both of these coming out right now. So there's the top one. All right, and there is the bottom one. All right, so if you notice, there is the slide pins right here. Okay, so this is where the slide pins are. What you want to do to make this easier on yourself is pull the boot back and pull the slide pin out. Okay, because they can kind of tie you up and obstruct the caliper from sliding off. So I'm just literally pulling them out. So you don't got to pull them all the way out. I just got them pulled out of where they were, just retracted them a bit, and that's going to make it easier to get this caliper off. All right, so now we want to go ahead and get this caliper out. It's going to be tight, but what you want to do is press in the clamp right here and let it come out. Okay, so you see how it just pretty much slides in. All right, so there we go. That's how it comes out. You might even need to hit it a hair with a rubber mallet from the back to get it started, but just be careful, because once it's off, it's loose. You know, the brake hose could go flying, so just be careful of that. What we're going to do is push our caliper pins back in right now. All right, so I'm going to do that and get them back in these boots for right now. All right. There we go. Pins are in. So now it's just a matter of getting the pads out. So if you press forward on this, if you can see I'm pressing forward, that's how you can press these tabs out. So it's held in with a tab here, a tab here. Press down on it and slide it out. Okay, same thing on the other side. It's going to be tight to work with the length of the brake hose, but there we go. Pressed in both sides, press it down, pull it out. Okay, the back, it's held in with 3 tabs. They're almost like a claw that go into the caliper piston. All right, so all we need to do here is, if you can see, I got both of my hands on each side of the pad. Just pull it towards you. Okay, so that's all I did. And then you can see what I'm referring to here. All right, so that came out. Now these pads were actually in pretty good condition. You know, he got the whole kit, so that's what we're going with. But the rotors definitely got a lip. The rotors could be replaced. So there we go, guys. Definitely not the worst pads I've ever seen, but you know, you got the whole kit. Why not? Let's get it done. All right, so there we go, guys. Next thing here is going to be, actually, you know, make sure your caliper here is nice and sturdy. All right, guys, so now that caliper is nice and secure right here, we got to get the rotor off. We can get right to getting the rotor off. As I mentioned in the front, sometimes rotors are rust welded. That would be the case with this one here. It's rust welded on, so we're gonna have to persuade it to come off. As you saw in the front, it was loose. I could slide it off. So now I can show you how to get this off easily and efficiently. So what I have here is a rubber dead blow. This is a 4-pound rubber dead blow. Okay, you could use a 3 or 4 pound. Both of them would be fine. What I'm going to do is whack this around the body of the rotor, and you'll see it free up. So let's go ahead and get this thing off. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get this rotor off. So I'm just going to take a few hits around the body of it, and it should free it right up. There it is. Just needs a few steady blows and she'll loosen up and you can slide it right off. All right, so since we have the rotor off here, I'm gonna go ahead and get our caliper piston retracted, okay? So you could use, you know, a pad separator or something like that. I'm gonna be using the same setup I had in the front. So, you know, this pad separator I showed you for the dual piston setup in the front actually works pretty good back here in the rear as well. So what I'm gonna do is get this thing fitted in here, and then once I got it, we'll go ahead and get this retracted. All right guys, I got this thing locked in. I don't have to go too far, but just gonna get it to pretty much where I got it in the front, about the same distance, and it should be just fine. There you go guys, that should be perfectly fine. All right, so if you can see, I got the box from the rotors underneath of the knuckle here with the axle. So what I'm gonna do is take some brake cleaner, and I'm just gonna get in here, get around the e-brake, and just get a fresh start for when we put this new rotor and all that on. All right, so just lightly brake cleaning it, and once this dries, we're gonna throw the rotor on. All right, so here is our new rotor. Keep in mind, like I said in the front, these do come with a oily grease on them for, you know, shelf longevity. So make sure you brake clean it and wipe it down. That's why you see a little bit of residue on it. That's just from you brake cleaning and wiping it down. But that new rotor's prepped, ready to go. So here is the part number. This is the same, you know, Detroit axle kit all in one, but this is the rotors for the rear part number, which is R-31329, and then the pads are P-1041. Okay, so these came all in the, you know, front and rear kit, but that is the individual part numbers if you're curious for each single part. All right, so there we go guys, pads and rotor. Let's get this new rotor on. All right, so I have the new rotor here. We're just going to slide it right over our wheel studs, get that thing on there nice. And the same thing we did on the front, I'm going to take a lug nut and I'm going to seat it right here at the bottom so it holds the rotor in place so it's not flopping all over us while we're working. All right, so there we go, that's nice and locked in. So rotor on, installed. Now let's go ahead and get the brake pads in. All right, so as we reviewed, the piston is retracted. Now I'm going to go ahead and press this rear pad in, but before I do that, I am going to put a little bit of contact grease on this piston as well. You know, it's a little different because it's clipped into it, but still a good idea. All right, so we got that greased up. What I'm also going to do is put a little bit here on the edges of the tabs, and then we're going to press this thing in. All right guys, so we got this thing greased up. Just want to kind of get those tabs to start pressing into the center of the piston, and then once you got it started, you can take both hands and press it evenly in, and it should pop in. There we go guys, got that pressed in. All right, so it might be hard to see, but she's in. All right, so now for the front, it's going to be kind of the same as we took it out. So if you see, I got these two tabs here kind of aligned with our circles just so you can see where they go in, and you just press it back over. So I'm literally just, you know, pressing it down, and there we go, she's locked in. So that's good to go guys. Both front and rear pads are in, so this caliper is all but prepped. Now, one thing, getting this slid over is not the easiest thing. If you see these slide pins, they got some play. You want these pulled back as far as possible on both sides so you can get this thing over. Okay, so just note that before we start sliding this over, make sure the pins are in the boot, and then make sure that the boot and the inner part is all the way pressed down. Okay, so all the way down here. All right, so there we go guys, let's go ahead and get this thing over. All right guys, so this is why I said these have to be pressed all the way back. Okay, because you see right there, see how that boot's almost touching where it mounts? You need to navigate that. You need to make sure it's pressed all the way in while you're pressing the caliper in, so it doesn't get caught up or mess the boot up. Now how this is going to have to go is we want it to go in like this, so on an angle. and then those tabs right on the pads lock in, and then we press it into the bottom. Okay, so it's going to be like that. All right, so let me go ahead, put the camera down, and you can see me slide this back over the rotor. All right guys, so I'm trying to get these pins slid all the way back so they can easily navigate over their mounting holes. So I got the front one pretty good, but the top one, I should say, the top one is good. Just got to get that bottom one here, and then I should be able to press this over and in. All right, got it. Yep, there it is, guys. So you just got to navigate it over it. All right, so I started with the top, pressed it in, and then got that boot pulled back, and then after I got that one on there, I went to the bottom and did the same thing. So this is pretty straightforward once you know how to approach it. So we're good to go. That is pressed in. You can see our tabs are on the hardware. Everything is good to go. Let's get the 10 mils back in and we're good to go. All right, so I know the sun is throwing a lot of shadows. I apologize for that, but not much I can do. Truck is where it is and can't really change that. So I just started finger tightening that 10 mil in. Got that one going on the top. Just got to get the one started here on the bottom, and they're both started. So I'm going to finger tighten both of our 10 mils in, and then we're going to torque those to spec. All right guys, both 10 mils are finger tight, so we're going to go ahead and torque both of these 10 mil caliper bolts to spec. I'm on the bottom one. The torque spec is 24 foot-pounds. All right, so 24 foot-pounds. I got my torque wrench locked in. Let's get this thing torqued. There we go, got the bottom one locked in. Just got to get the top and we are done, guys. All right, so both 10 mils torqued to spec. Got everything front and rear all done. Everything has been torqued. Everything is good to go. Everything feels good. You can, give this a spin. You could have did the same thing in the front just to make sure you got no, sounds, screeches, obstructions. I'm gonna go back up and forth down the driveway a couple times, just real slow to break it in real quick, make sure she feels good. But other than that, we are done. So I hope this helped with replacing the front and rear brakes and rotors on your first gen Nissan Titan. Make sure you stay tuned because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.